My name's Joe Cernik. I'm a member of the faculty here at Lindenwood University in St. Charles, Missouri, and I'd like to welcome you to Insight. Insight is a show where we normally discuss books on politics, both domestically and internationally, sometimes historical books that provide a perspective on the present. And then there's this other category. We're trying to look at things that will have an impact on politics, broader trends or things that may not precisely look like they're political but will have an impact. That's, I think, where this current book fits in. It's written by a man named Joseph Reagle Jr., and the title of his book is called Reading the Comments, Likers, Haters, and Manipulators at the Bottom of the Web. Now, joining me on the show today are three Lindenwood University students. To my immediate right is Marina Vela. To Marina's right is Madison Liddle. And to Madison's right is Curtis Heckler. So I wanted to read an opening quote, and then we can jump into a discussion about the book. The author writes, "There's a reason that comments are typically put on the bottom half of the internet. There is a lot of nonsense, silliness, and hurtful comments down there. But in sifting through the comments, we can learn much about ourselves and the ways that other people seek to exploit the value of our social selves. This book is an exercise in reading comment, and it documents an expedition to the bottom of the web. I show how comment can inform, improve, manipulate, alienate, shape, and perplex us."
So social media today is a huge thing. There's a lot of apps and sites where you can comment, you can like, you can share with your friends, and in the society is like very important today. But there's also this like big fight or gap between what people like or what people dislike. So I think we have to be careful as well with that.
Sure, I think social media is huge in today's day, and everyone in our generation uses social media. It's just a fact. And so getting a little bit deeper into what that means and the impacts of that, I think it's important.
Absolutely, I would definitely agree with that. I would also like to point out and kind of move on the discussion a little bit. One of the big things that he mentioned in his book was the fact that there's a lot of typical clutter amongst commentary that's on all forms of social media, be it Facebook, YouTube, or whatever. The idea of trolls just simply going in and just making statements anywhere from something that may agree just to take up a waste of space to something that's just absolutely bizarre and way out there. Like you'll typically see ludicrous comments out there about, the flat earth theory and other aspects like that.
There was a guy that believes the earth is flat. He just shot himself up, went, I guess, about 2,800 feet in the air. He spent like $20,000 of his own money to build his own rocket, and the rocket went up, I think it was in about last week I read about it. I don't know what he thought he was going to do, that somehow he wants to prove the earth is flat. And I guess if he went high enough, he could look down and say, look at that, there's the pancake called the earth. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. So he's discredited everything that's already taken a picture of Earth from space. So, yeah, that sort of nonsense, I guess, will happen. A lot of this, it seems to focus on things like if you're watching YouTube that you click like or dislike. And so, or the idea that you go into a restaurant and now before you go back into the restaurant, maybe you put comments online or you read the comments before you go to the restaurant, or you go into a technology store and before you buy the product, you're trying to look at comments that people have made about how that product works. So that as a result of all these comments actually have an impact on us.
So reviews are very important for products or services today because people will read the reviews before buying the product. So they want to make sure like if other people test it and like their opinions about the product. So that's why like all these services and the companies want like good reviews so they will sell more products.
Yeah, I definitely fall into this category myself. I find myself, before I purchase anything, going online, checking out reviews, making sure that it's something that other people like. But when you do that, you definitely fall into that, you know, you have to sift through them. You can't just trust them at face value. You have to look and see, is this something that someone's actually tested? Is this a place that they've actually verified this person's eaten? I mean, because people are going to be on there trying to push their own products and push their own services. And so you kind of have to make sure that what you're reading is actually valid information.
I would agree with that entirely. He pointed out in his book that there was approximately a 72% chance of there being a positive review right after a negative review, so that definitely increases the skepticism of there's a potential fake review. And I see that often when I go and download an app, say on Google Play or the App Store or whatever. You'll find someone gives a very condemning review about a certain app, saying it's no good, it's very defective, it needs to be worked on. And then almost immediately right after that will be someone that says, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Right.
Yeah, when I read that in the book, because I'm looking at buying what they call a Wi-Fi extender for my RV, and I was reading a number of reviews, and I'm thinking, I don't understand this. Like, suddenly, this is pure crap, one said, and this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you go, and are we looking at the same product? And then I realized I was reading the book as I was going through these online comments and realizing, yeah, they were saying if you tend to see a positive review, high chance you're going to see a negative review. If you see a negative review, high chance the next one's going to be a positive review. So you're sitting there going, okay, so now what am I reading online? How much should I believe what I'm actually reading?
So even the author said that he has like this app in his phone, it's Amazon app. So even he's not buying on Amazon, he goes to the store and just check the Amazon reviews to see if the product that he's buying in another store is good or is not. So like people rely a lot on these reviews, and the fact that people test these reviews. And another funny thing that I realized, like the sites, they can manipulate the reviews. So all the reviews is gonna be there, but maybe the ones that showed first, as you said, are the good ones. So, and you don't have time to read 100 reviews, so you only read like the first ones, and the first ones are the best ones.
Right, and I think it's hilarious that when you go online, you look at a product, and like Amazon, they rate their products by stars, and so you look at the comments, and 60 people have given it 5 stars, but then there's 45 people have given it 1 star. You know, where do you get that difference? And so you kind of have to sift through and go, all right, well, where did the company manipulate this, or where are the people who are selling this manipulate that, so that you can see like who's pushing the product here, and what am I actually going to be getting?
I think it's also interesting to note that when you do and go look at these reviews, 5 stars, 1 stars, etc., you really don't see any reviews that place in, say, the 2 or 3 or 4 stars. So what you almost get is this polarization of reviews, as opposed to, say, someone who's level-headed saying, you know, here's the strengths and weaknesses of this product, whereas opposed to saying, oh, this is absolutely incredible versus it's absolutely terrible.
Right.
Well, and in the subtitle of the book, Manipulators, because when you brought up the idea of a company, said there's company inducement to people. If you give us a good review, what we're willing to do is give you a 10% discount on your next purchase.
Right.
And so I know I got that from something I bought online, and I commented, they sent back a thing, and they essentially were trying to encourage me to give them the greatest review under the planet in exchange for, and here's our 10% coupon. And so, yeah, you're trying to then figure out, well, okay, what sort of criteria am I using here to help people?
Right. Yeah, and today what a lot of companies do is they like catch these figures called influencers. So they send a lot of stuff to them, and they just try it and test it, and they are going to provide like a review. But the thing is, if the review is good, these influencers maybe have like 1 million followers. So the impact they create, if it's a good thing, the sales are gonna raise up a lot. So it's like all a strategy to sell more the product.
Right. I think it's interesting what you said about how people who are level-headed don't really make the comments. That would tell you the good and the bad, because who are going to make comments? People who are either ecstatic about what they got or people who hate what they got. They're going to be the ones who go in and say, I love this product, or I can't believe I had to spend my money on this, or, you know, there's those two, like you said, polarizations of what that is. And so, yeah, trying to push people who might have a positive opinion towards it is going to kind of counteract the fact that there are some people who are really going to hate what they have.
Yeah, it's a good comment about that. You know, you have 1 to 5, but how many people are doing 2, 3, and 4? And you can see it when they do a graph, because a lot of times they'll show you the graph and they'll say, here we are, we have all these people at 5 and all the 1. I'm looking, I'm thinking, how come I don't see much in the middle between 2, 3, and 4, but I see a lot of 1 and 5. And again, one of the things he's trying to point out is this stuff matters to people that are trying to push their restaurants or their products or their company. So as a result, they're aware that these comments have an impact on whether people are making buying decisions, for example, on how they are looking at something.
What happens sometimes is that if you buy online, for example, people will give a bad rating because the delivery time was so long, or if you are in a restaurant because maybe the service wasn't good, but this doesn't mean that the product was bad, or maybe the food wasn't bad, but they just give a bad rating, 1 star, for example, because it took 1 week to get here, but it doesn't mean that the product was bad. So this is like a misconception of the product as well.
The other thing he was talking about, and it occurred to me when I realized that all these years I've given exactly 1 comment. and I remember it was something like, yeah, this is an okay place to sleep. You know, it was one of those, and that was fine, and I moved on and realized later, so what? Why did I even do this silliness? But he talks about that there are some people that do a great deal of this. So he was referring to somebody on Amazon who claims she reads something like 133 books a week. You know, it was some ridiculous number, and writing all these reviews on Amazon about books, and it didn't seem to make any sense, thinking 133 books a week, how's that possible? I'm trying to figure out when she even had time to sleep or talk or meet people, because it doesn't logically make sense.
Right, and I think it's interesting that this was written in 2015. You know, we're 3 years past this book being released, not even when he was researching this, and we still see this heavily in today, and even more so probably in the fact that, you know, internet shopping has become such a big thing. I've had retail experience in the past, and, you know, brick and mortar stores just aren't going to be existing here in not too long, and that's what all the trends are saying. And so I think it's interesting that we're looking at this now before it happens and kind of seeing how this is influencing our present day.
I would definitely agree with that statement.
Well, okay. There was a interesting little part in the book where he talked about Twitter in its early years, which I'm not even sure when Twitter began. I guess it's a couple of years back. I knew it had that thing about whatever it is, 141 characters or 131, so you have it precise. And so, and I don't even know if I have a Twitter account. You know, that's the funny part. But he said in the beginning that people were saying things differently on Twitter than they did after it was around for a while, that they were more willing to express themselves, and he found that in those early years there was a greater degree of expression than there is now.
Yeah, I think that the popularity of Twitter started when a lot of celebrities started using Twitter, and the fact to express yourself and let all the other people know and read about you is that what makes it interesting, because you can read what is someone doing right now, or what the thoughts are about the specific topic, and people, like, you feel like you know the other person.
Yep, and I would agree that in present day it's become less about like your personal self and more about, you know, retweeting what somebody else has already said, or expressing yourselves through somebody else's already made creativity. You know, you look at Facebook even, and, you know, 5 years ago, it was people commenting their own stuff and posting about their day, and that's all good and fine. And now you look at it, and I scroll through my Facebook feed, and it's all videos that people have reposted. And so it's just interesting to see the dynamic that's kind of shifted away from some of these social medias into something different, and kind of on its own kind of done that.
I think what's also interesting to note is that there has been a general trend change of what people are posting on social media. One of the big things I notice is individuals, say like Gordon Ramsay and of course Wendy's restaurants, have decided they're going to go off on a tangent and decide they're going to crack jokes at everybody, claiming that they're a superior product. There's one video compilation I've seen on the internet one time where it has people asking Gordon Ramsay, about their food and whether they did a good job or not, and then Gordon Ramsay comes back and he rather savagely attacks their products.
Yeah.
Yeah, that quote on Twitter, we said at the beginning in 2006, so I guess that's when it started, Twitter felt edgy and intimate. It was not uncommon to find users flush with an encounter with a minor or major celebrity. Also, people, especially the famous, were thrilled to be able to authentically express themselves. People like talking about themselves, and Twitter appeared to be a safe place to do that. And then he's, I think, trying to emphasize how it has changed. Now you've sort of accepted it in a whole different way.
Yeah, and also the evolution of the app makes it more popular, and today being something else, because it started with words and characters, but now you can add the picture, you can add your location, you can tag your friend, you can retweet, repost, whatever you want to do. So it's something more than just state how are you feeling today.
Right, and I think now it's shifted away from that whole feeling of intimate, like you said, into public. I mean, everyone has their platform to make their opinions, and so that's what a lot of people do, is they kind of create this own soapbox for themselves, and that's where you find yourself nowadays, is instead of having intimate relationships with someone, on the internet and being able to connect with them that way, it's more like, everyone look at what I'm saying, and I'll look at what you're saying, but we're not going to have a conversation about it.
He referred to Oprah Winfrey, and that I guess people try to put a lot of pressure on her to comment on books they've done or something, and so that as a result, if she will retweet, then I guess it receives some higher level of recognition, and she's aware that she has to keep her retweets or tweets about books mainly to a limited number, so that they receive some greater weight, and that you're trying to figure out, well, how do I handle this? And so here's a celebrity who's trying to figure out, how do I use Twitter?
I agree with that statement entirely. I mean, the author emphasized a term that's known as attention philanthropy, where, and it's also it's not an unlimited source, so you have to limit where you apply that.
If like she said, if she goes out and she retweets everything or she comments on everything, then her impact is diminished. I mean, who cares if she talks about 100 different books in a week? If she talks about 4, then those 4 are going to be pretty popular because she's well looked at in that realm. But if she's going out and endorsing everything, then she kind of loses her edge.
And when you are famous and you have a reputation, you have to be very precise, because if you just retweet everything, you're gonna lose your credibility, because okay, you just retweet everything because you think everything is important, but you have to filter, knowing what is important and what do you want to show to the world.
It's sort of like the Stephen Colbert bump. And so that he frequently would say, if I refer to you, then suddenly you receive some momentary celebrity status and people suddenly pay attention. He does it in a joking way, but it was actually true. And so suddenly he might criticize someone, and suddenly their status temporarily goes up for a while. And so, I'm going to give you the Colbert bump. And so to some extent it was sort of the same thing.
Right. Well, I mean, as we're talking, celebrities, they have a huge impact on people.
Oh, yeah.
So people just do things because celebrities or famous people say it. So they have to be careful, like when they lay on one side, the other, what they retweet, what they post, what they like, everything.
Yep.
The other thing, well, one of the things I thought was interesting in the book is he was saying, okay, we think of comments related to the internet as being somehow new or unique, and he's saying they're not, that they've been around since recorded time, and that people have felt the need to comment about things. And he went through sort of different historical examples of how people went out there and commented on things. And so he's going all the way back to Martin Luther. And so Martin Luther is posting his sort of proclamation on a cathedral. And so that as a result, his comments quickly spread, or what he says, they went viral in that period. And so that was sort of what we tend to think of as the onset of the Reformation. But as a result, then you ended up having the Pope commenting on Martin Luther's comments, and the Pope said, this is a plague and a cancerous disease. And so here the Pope was commenting about comments.
And once again, you see the polarization. There are people who are greatly for this and greatly against it, and the middle ground just pretty much doesn't exist. And you see that in historical times, you see it nowadays, and I think that's just something that human nature has.
A great commentator on subjects like this is able to utilize the technology at the time rather effectively. Like, say, with Martin Luther, the printing press had been around for about 50 years at that time, so it was still a new, late and great technology to be had. So his ideas were then printed out and then distributed amongst individuals in Europe at that time. And what's interesting is that the author tends to take it a step further back on people commenting. He mentioned how during Roman times people would rather literally write things on other people's walls as commentary.
Well, and he talked about the origin of the New York Times book reviews. And so he's tracing it back to 1896 and said, so the New York Times does this book review section, and it subsequently became so popular that now you are having schools assigning students to write a book review, and it subsequently led to more publications. And so his statement is, one of the lessons drawn from this brief history of reviews is that comments lead to more comments. And so the notion that it's sort of normal to constantly see this.
People with, like, they always have something to say, whether you agree or you disagree. So just stating your opinion would allow other people to state their opinion as well. So that's why comment leads to other comments.
Yeah, people always have something to say, and whether it's good or bad, they're gonna find a way to say it, and history has proven that. And technology nowadays and how advanced it's become even in the last 10 years, like you talked about with Twitter, it's only been around for 12 years or so, and the advancements that's made alone has been giving people a platform to be able to stand on, that's given them more of a public domain to make statements on, and so we have to decide if that's good or bad and how we deal with that.
1927, another example, Chase and Cernik. I don't know who they are, but they issued a publication, and the publication was to have people comment on products they bought. And then this particular example here is about toothpaste. And so they were asking people who were using different types of toothpaste to give them comments on toothpaste. So they published a book on the comments about different products. And so again, the idea that this isn't something new, we've done this and it's part of human nature to comment on comments.
Yeah, the thing that the comments help people decide. If you are on the fence, like you don't know if you should buy or should not, or this is good or bad, like reading those comments, it will help you to decide.
Yep. I think it's important to realize that comments aren't new. We've talked about this the whole show, is that they're not new, but technology has given us a platform to be able to do that in a more wide way. And you can even do comments anonymously, so you don't even have to put your name out there. And the fact that technology is literally in the back pocket of most Americans now gives it more access, and people can make comments easier, and they're not as afraid. And there's so much more ability to be able to do that, and so it's beneficial for people. It's beneficial for companies. They can get their name out there more. They can push their products more. They can have better an edge on their competition. But like you said, that there's an issue of the fact that there's so much of it, and they can get bogged down in all of that.
I think it's interesting, even despite just individual commentary, celebrities still have a stronghold, even amongst products. Like, for a while, the Ford Motor Company had Mike Roud, the host from Dirty Jobs, basically convey this image of a Ford pickup being, you know, the everyday working man's type of vehicle, and that was the vehicle of choice.
I just was an interesting story I liked. It was about this guy, James Berbere, if I pronounce his name correctly. So just some guy had his day job, I think, as an engineer, and he'd write movie reviews online. And apparently he wrote so many of them, and they were well developed, they weren't inarticulate, that he actually is listed as one of the 10 most famous movie critics, along with people like Rex Reed and Roger Ebert. And so that he didn't call himself a movie critic. He was just sort of watching movies, and then he felt he was going to put his comments online. But interesting how here he was sort of as an amateur reviewer. That wasn't his job, but he now is listed as one of the top 10 most well-known movie critics.
Yeah, I think the key that he used it to his advantage was that he used it like passion. So it wasn't his main purpose. He had another job. He just do it because he likes it, and then that's why you get like a good compensation out of it.
Yeah, it's just another example of how technology gives people opportunities that they didn't have even 20 years ago. I mean, no one made a day job out of movie comments online, you know, and he popped up on this list because he did it for fun, and it's one of those things where that wouldn't have happened if he was doing it on paper. People wouldn't, I mean, he would have been doing it as a job at that point. He wouldn't have gone out of his way to go put his movie critics in the newspaper and buy ad time, but he can go on the internet, post it for free, and now he's this hugely influential person in this industry.
I think it's also important to remember that it's also the quality of the commentary at hand. Like we mentioned here, he basically made all the commentary at such a high quality and was able to articulate it and make to the point that it appealed to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. It wasn't just somebody, because I know I read quickly some of the reviews on Amazon just to see how people write them and realize that people, the level goes from very well, good book review to just nonsense. And so that as a result, you're thinking, why just sort of separate it and have some good ones from bad ones? We only have a few minutes left. What do you think of the book?
Yeah, I really, really like the book. I would recommend it to everyone because young people are very related with the topic. They know like everything this book talks about, and old people, they can use this book to learn more. Older people, sorry. They can use this book to learn more about social media because it's a reality in the world we live today.
Right, I think it's a book that's really, really hot today, and it's in the topics that people want to talk about. It's something that people think they know a lot about, but do we really know a lot about it? And so I think it's a book for everyone, and it was a really easy read. It's short. It's only maybe 100 pages at most.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's going to take you long to read, and I think it's something that would be really beneficial for everyone.
I really enjoyed the book. I think it's sort of a gateway book for young individuals to get into sort of the political spectrum.
Yeah, I liked it. Good book. And since I read reviews on some products, I was sort of aware how to be more cautious, let's say. And so thank you for joining us. A good book.